Coming up this week on Success Won't Come Calling.
What is success, and you know what I mean, and how does that, how do you want to be viewed as successful or and stuff like that? Look, as long as I can go home at night and the people in the four walls are the most important, look at me with respect and I've done the most for them, then that's fine for me.
Hello friends, welcome to SWCC. Simon Gibson here. Hope you're all well. If you like the podcast, please click subscribe and you'll be told whenever an episode drops with one of my fantastic guests. My guest this week is someone we've been trying to get onto the podcast for some time. His name is Matty Farrell and you've just heard a few words from him. Matty is the leader of Graffiti Spirits Group, who are one of the leading independent hospitality groups in the United Kingdom, and he's one of the leading hospitality entrepreneurs. I'm thrilled he's here. Matty, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, you? Good?
Yeah, really good.
It's hard
thanks.
to say hospitality 3 times in a row.
It really is, and particularly if you combine it with like entrepreneur and group and these sort of things. But I really appreciate you taking time to do this, man.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Now, I don't think we're going to be able, in the time we've got, to work through every one of the restaurants and bars that you own, because there's 9 of them, and I know that there are others in the pipeline. I suppose where we could perhaps start is, what is the hospitality industry? Because it's a huge description of a sector and how you got into it in business terms. So what is the hospitality sector, first of all?
It's a pretty broad statement, I think. Well, let's take the word, for example. I mean, we'll go back to that in a sec. But on a personal level, I've always worked in the industry since I was 18. Worked for like a lot of large hotel chains and other people. And John Ennis, who's my business partner, we decided like around 12 years ago now that we just couldn't carry on working with people. So we took a risk, and we only wanted one place and just to work there and have our own business, and that was it. And obviously it's kind of manifested from there into sort of quite a diverse group. I think with the word hospitality, it's a very broad word, and I think that it's diverse. What is hospitality? It can be anything. This is hospitality, isn't it? You've given me a glass of water, So, and obviously you see that a lot in the press at the moment. Hospitality this, hospitality that, hospitality suffering, but it is very, very broad. We're lucky to have quite a diverse group in the sense of we've got specialty coffee on one end, however, very sort of involved in the nighttime economy, which involves nightclubs and etc., which has been absolutely devastated by what's been going on. So, that's a thing. So hospitality, it's a strange word, actually. Quite, it's a bit.
And you've got,
annoying.
Like you say,
it's almost annoying as foodie.
Yeah, because you as you say, you've in amongst your businesses, you've got coffee shop, you've got cocktail bars, you've got tequila bars, you've got restaurants, and I suppose that you used the word risk earlier, which I run a group which is similar to yours in the sense of there being a diversity of brands. I mean, we're in the professional service and tech space rather than hospitality. Yeah. But the word risk is one with which I'm very familiar. And my personal journey is like yours insofar as I was doing a technical job. I was a lawyer at the time. And then I had to step out into business. And that felt risky when I started my first company. How did you and your business partner think of taking risk at the first time when you started your company? Was it something that felt daunting, or was it something that you were very comfortable with as an individual?
Don't know, really. Probably have to ask the person at the time, as it was changed a lot since. 38 now, so it was 26 at the time. You probably don't really think about things as much in the same way. I think at the time, probably were that keen to give it a go. It was a massive risk, do you know what I mean? At the time, Liverpool was like the independent scene at Liverpool. I've probably said it quite a few times before, but it was obviously not really there, where around the Rope Walks area and things like that. It just didn't exist. Independently owned restaurants and bars were very hard to come by, very, very much behind Leeds, very much behind Manchester. So we knew, obviously being from here, that you know, there was a massive opportunity at the time. I think got that sick of working with people. I think just were really excited by it. Obviously I had to borrow some money and et cetera, but I think more excited really. And not having a bigger plan, it was like, well, we want, which was Santa Gepito's at the time, which is just still there. Yeah, just not kind of thinking past that. It's like, well, we want to work there. That's our own business, and you know, if we get a wage from it, great. That was the kind of dream at the time. And then obviously things change and manifest as you get older. There was opportunities came around that we could then invest into the area and the city. I suppose like life, it's all about timing, isn't it? So, you know, we were there at the right time, and kind of then it's developed from there. And yeah, and obviously being from the city as a basis, you know, it's good that we could do that in our hometown.
And of course, what you've managed to achieve since those days is to spread across the northwest of the UK. And I know we're going to move on to later to some of your plans in terms of further afield, both in the UK and possibly internationally. But I was really interested in the comment you made there, Matty, about the fact that you'd reached the point where you were fed up of working for someone else and you were sort of fed up with the grind. That's totally how I felt when I started my first business. I felt that I'd reached as far as I could go as a non-leader, as someone who didn't call the shots, as someone who wasn't responsible for the vision.
Yeah.
The balance of that, of course, is that once you step away from the security of being an employee and you become an employer, the guarantee of your salary at the end of the month, together with the rights that carry with that, tend to evaporate quite quickly. How is it that some people grasp that and some people don't? Have you noticed anything else in yourself or in other entrepreneurs? What is it that fires that ability to take risk?
That's a good question. I don't know really. I think the ability. I think it's not being too bothered with failure and using failure as a successful tool, and not. Can I swear?
You certainly can. Yeah. You say what you want, man.
And not really giving a fuck about what people think, which is probably what stops a lot of people doing stuff in the first place. And I'd say like now, I'm a little bit older, I'm probably at that point where there's probably stuff in the past where you're going, oh no, I'm not sure about that and things. And I think that grows with experience and getting older and probably a little bit more mature to a sense that, not really caring and using success, because we made so many mistakes, like, and then, you know, but people don't see that, or, you know, you get people saying stuff where I used to maybe be bothered, where now I don't really give a shit. You know, like, why is that guy doing a podcast? Doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, okay. But they're the people who haven't bothered trying in the first place. So I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? So I'm just, I think that's the main thing. But then, you know, I think once you've made that step, it's very difficult maybe to go back. I mean, I don't know what the future will bring, like, but I think when you work with me, so it's more, it's a lifestyle, isn't it? You're never really off. So you're not on shit, but then there's no one telling you where you have to be apart from yourself. So the kind of buck stops with you and your business partner and a few other people. I think that's probably where that's a bit I like about it. But obviously people don't see a lot of what you have to deal with.
I'm really interested in that reference to overcoming that fear of failure, or perhaps not having that fear of failure, because I agree with that. And when I stepped out into my business journey in 2012, the bigger risk to me felt like staying put. That felt like a degree of, I mean, I was in a job which I was very well paid for. I was a lawyer. It was at some level fulfilling, but I was 34, And I just thought to myself, if I'm doing this in 10 years and I'm sort of stuck, then that's the failure rather than taking steps forward and it not working out. So that's how I overcame it. And when we started the podcast, it was all about meeting people who'd succeeded through struggle and through challenge. And I mean, frankly, who doesn't?
Yeah.
How many successful people do you meet who achieve their goals and achieve their purpose without struggle? I don't remember anyone.
Don't think they exist.
No, and I mean, the phrase I sometimes think of is, business is meant to be tough. It's like the gym. You can't take all the weights out and just leave the mirrors in. You've got to go through the hard yards.
Have you done stand up before?
In terms of you mentioned there it being like a lifestyle. Yeah. In terms of the hard work you've got to put in.
Yeah.
Now that seems to me, my knowledge of the food and drink sector is particularly the case, but I associate it with long hours, demanding just business hours in terms of when you're operational, also demanding customers, lots of competition. Is there something specific, do you think, about the food and drink industry which is particularly demanding?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's had a lot of bad press about kind of people leaving, especially through the pandemic, people leaving, and now it's a staffing crisis because people don't want to do certain hours, or that, people used to work. This is the reason I started in the first place, I won't name the hotel, but you could do like 70, 80 hours, but you're still on a salary of like 14 grand. And it's like, well, why would you do that? And people won't do that now, and they don't want to put up with that, and that's understandable. So there's got to be a sort of a change and a culture change on especially at government level and how you're getting squeezed and things like that. But one of the okay, you just said you were a lawyer base. You can't blag being a lawyer. You've got to go through a certain process to get there. And okay, I'm sure there's shit ones and sure there's good ones, but the hospitality industry and stuff, there's a lot of people it's like, oh, I'd love to own my own restaurant. That's a bit of me, that. And it's like, well, what do you know about the industry? And it's usually, a lot of it is fuck all.
Yeah.
So, and TV has got a lot to blame, but that probably, the Gordon Ramsay and people look and go, and so it's always be a second thing. Yeah, I can do that, or and people think it's like a thing to have, but unless you know or you operate and the industry, it's difficult enough as it is. You'll see a lot of that fail because you can't just be dipping in and out of it and because you want to be seen sitting down in your own restaurant or whatever. It's not a thing. So you've got to live it and be understandable about it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Or a lot of the time you throw money at it all you want, but that's my opinion on it. And that I would say is an issue with the hospitality industry. Look, by the way, if I'm all down. If someone wants to try something and they haven't had any experience, but then they're all learning about the industry and then they're involved in it, that's fine, different story. But I think there is that element of it where and that's an issue. And then, things are very saturated and it gets difficult for things. So there's no cap on it or how many things can open, and if you see what I mean. So that's what I'd say on that.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason why I was keen just to explore this issue of the diversity of your businesses was because you've had to, when I was researching your group, what occurred to me is that you've got a particular opportunity in terms of presenting your business to basically different demographics, because I'm sure that your clientele in Bold Street Coffee, which is a what I think of it as like a boutique coffee shop, compared to say El Bandito's, which is that's the tequila bar, isn't it? You're dealing there with different clientele. How do you as leader?
You might have the same one in a completely different state.
Yeah, I suppose. How do you as leaders sort of plan or establish those brands in terms of the different things that they do?
I think it's what probably carries on from what I said before, that obviously it is broad hospitality. So they are maybe bracketed in hospitality, but the tequila industry, for example, is completely separate industry to the specialty coffee arena. So you are, at a business level, you're looking at completely different things, like completely. Okay, yeah, they have food and drink as a product. However, they are completely different. I mean, El Bandito, John especially, he's very well known in the tequila industry. If you asked anyone in Europe, they're probably going to know what El Bandito was. But inside Liverpool, you probably wouldn't. People probably don't really get that. And then, yeah, the thing with why we've done things as well is probably done it in the hard way. We've got so many different brands. You've got to have different hats on all the time. Whereas if you've got, you're focusing on one brand and, you're going to aim to get that to 30 sites, there's a specific way of looking at it. It's a completely different scenario, that. And then as well, I think you've got to look at how things change, especially over the last 5 years. You mentioned tech before. I mean, all these industries now are starting to be merged together. So without tech, or taking on social media. So we've got a social media company now out of it where we may as well do our own social media company, considering we do 10, 12 sites, and then we've got external clients from that. I think you've got to move with the times and be able to want to change. That goes back to what you said before, wanting to change and not being stuck.
Yeah.
So, developing things that way and having the right people in the right roles are what does it. But I suppose it's interesting. I don't really think about this a lot, but obviously when you look at it, they are different things completely. But obviously when you're in the office, they're probably bracketed into more of a one thing. But
you mentioned people there, and that really, your investment in your people and the way that they're at the forefront of what you do, that really comes across both in terms of when you look at your digital footprint and your websites and your socials, but also when I just literally had a coffee in Bowl Street Coffee then, and one thing that came across to me is that a business is a good one, excuse me, when you walk in and the staff are smiling and they're talking to one another and they look relaxed and they look confident, and that they actually kind of are enjoying welcoming you to the place. Now, the leader has to take credit for that. How do you manage to nurture that sort of an environment for your staff in an industry which is full on? There's pressures, that's clear. How do you manage to pull that off?
I suppose it's not easy, and obviously it takes a lot of time. And if you look at our core, I don't know, we'll probably, if you take the whole thing, you're looking at probably 200 staff, where the core staff are say around 10 who are, the operations and stuff. But the core staff, there's people who've come with us for 5 years who've started in different roles and ended up, Dougie, who's our ops manager, he's been a manager of each place. He's worked for us in that way. So, and Tony runs a social media company. He's done every role going through. So he knows that culture, and sort of developing people coming with you, and having that ethos of them. It's their place as much as ours, is always been the motto, and that's important. Look, it doesn't work all the time, but I think, you've got to give those people a responsibility and the, not the opportunity, but, to be able to make mistakes as well and be there to support them. And that's something that we do. We're not there watching people clocking in. We're not watching how many hours they've done a week. It's about that trust and gaining that culture with people and knowing that, without them, it's not going to be the same. So investing in your people is massively important, and then they're going to invest back. And touch wood, a lot of the people in some serious roles have been with us for a long time, and then have opportunity to progress. And I'm grateful for that as well.
I agree with you. What I think it's reasonable, excuse me, for a team member to require of you as leader, and this is what the approach I've always tried to take, is that they should really know what journey they're on. That they should know what it is that is the purpose of the business in which they're working, because they're making a significant investment of their time. And also that they know what their own journey is, and that they know that they do have the ability to progress and to earn more money and to do work which is more fulfilling to them. And we certainly haven't, I'm not suggesting for one moment that we've got this perfect, but we've found that if you do give that transparency to your team, and that you also provide them with the means to achieve their potential, that's when you get people sticking with you. And it's when you get people who live and breathe and reflect your own values.
Yeah. I'd say it's quite difficult though. I think, times have changed a lot. Do you know what I mean? And it depends what someone who's 18 or 19 wants is definitely very different to, well, you look at someone who's maybe mid 30s or 40, that's a different generation. And there's a lot of, it's something that, you're always trying to learn, but their needs and differences are completely different. That's quite challenging, I think, especially in an ever-changing world where, everything is so ran by the phone. Mental health is massive. So when you're looking at it, at the moment, if you're looking for jobs or how you promote your jobs, they're completely different. Have you got mental health help in the company and stuff like that, and what are the hours of work and things like that, and that's, I don't know, it's changing. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I couldn't tell you. I don't know whether that is a problem for, you see a change in work ethic, but then quality of life comes into it. I suppose we're in a time now, in a scenario where all these things are jangled into one thing because of the pandemic.
Let's talk a bit about that, because I totally get what you're saying about the sort of generational shift. Do you get what I mean?
Because I wasn't sure I was making sense.
No, you do. And it's difficult sometimes to work out, isn't it, what the real motivating factors are for different individuals within different age groups and that sort of thing. But with your industry in particular, it seems to me that we're all in this position where, the world is changing, expectation is changing, but particularly for yourselves, you've also had Brexit to contend with in terms of your access to the labour force. And then, of course, lasting impact of COVID.
Yeah.
Just let's talk about Brexit first. Has that had any impact on your on your ability to access the labour force?
What's that, Brexit? Brexit. Where do you start with that? Yeah, massively. Brexit for me is obviously a massive mistake. I think it's massively affected this city, which is obviously very EU based,
yes,
Europeanly funded, and wouldn't be where it is today without that. But obviously, then on a labour perspective, if you're talking about that,
absolutely.
Most of the people, there was a large influx of Eastern European labour, which are always been great people as well. Many of them have gone back for opportunities back home, things like that. And then you've got the problem then of being short-staffed. Then you've got the problem of the pandemic on top of that, where people are like, well, I'm not doing those hours anymore for that money, and why should I? So then you're creating this equation of a huge problem. So Brexit was the start of it. I don't think you've seen the full thing of that just yet.
No.
Maybe one only positive thing, which might take years, is that people, on a product or food perspective, start creating more in the UK. But that's only because they've had to. But then I don't know if that's the answer, because then it becomes very insular, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think weirdly you haven't seen the fallout of Brexit yet. You're just seeing them sort of pounding the door behind the pandemic. But I think the full emphasis of that will be apparent when you come out of it, and the supply chains and stuff like that have completely changed.
Do you? I mean, this is the message I get from many businesses who've been reliant upon either supply chains coming from Europe or accessing a European labour market or a consumer base or whatever it might be. And I suppose the first thing to ask is, do you see any solutions to that? I mean, you mentioned one, of course, the increase in manufacture and production in the UK on something like the labour market in terms of making sure you've got the right people, the right volume and the right quality. Do you see any solutions that you could deliver in terms of that?
Well, look, right. Let's look at it like this. It depends how you want to live your life or how you look at human beings. Because if you could say that Brexit was born on casual racism and stuff like that, where it's kind of then manifested into something else, where you're looking at humans on how they look rather than the content of the character, which is always a problem. So which something that I don't believe in, you know, and I think that is where the problem you face, you know, that's a big problem of what we face. And that's, you're going to get a very big split society, because I think we'd be in a much better position, for example, if we were still in the EU, if you want to talk about Brexit, and you'd have a much bigger pool about where it's a thing. And I think the world needs to look openly at rather than inside, or we can do this all. I thought we're moving forward, not that way. Do you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, look, most Scousers come from, my family are all come over Irish immigrants. But you got to look back and see that, but people don't want to know the history or anything about anything like that. So you've got, I just think people need to, I don't know, we need to be looking at ourselves more as a whole on a global scale. And if you know, people are the right people, then that's what should be looked at, not about where you're from or what you look like. That just needs to be something in the past, and that only that, and kindness and how you live your life and how you treat your fellow person. Now is, you know, look, you were talking about kids before. Well, before, you know,
off camera.
You know, what you always teach them, don't you? Or treat other people how you want to be treated and stuff like that. But at some point, that's been forgotten, hasn't it? So, I don't know. I just think people need to be more educated on that and how we treat each other for any sort of change. And I think that's the problem. I think you're seeing it, aren't you? Across globally now, obviously things are accentuated because of the pandemic.
Definitely. And I mean, there's something in that. Those values that you've just so well described, Matty, which is so important. I've always thought so. It's so important in terms of leading your own business, because there's only so many things you can control. When I was disappointed with Brexit, and obviously the pandemic has been a nightmare.
Yeah,
but they're out of our control. And I think sometimes all you can do is focus upon the areas which you can directly influence. And I've got to say, I agree with you in terms of there's this mantra that to be successful in business, you need to be ruthless, which I just don't get. I agree that you have to be decisive, you have to be clear, you have to be in a position where you steer the ship in the most clear and calm and exciting direction that you can. But the way you treat your people, the way you treat your suppliers, the way you treat your customers, paying your bills on time, providing your staff with support. You mentioned looking after mental well-being as one really important area. That ultimately is where you build your value. It's not in short-term decision-making, which might make you richer, as I say, in the short term, but have a long-term deterioration in the value that you have and that your business has.
Well, isn't that how you'd want to live your life outside of business? Why should it be different?
Well, no,
that's what I'm saying. So, you know, you've got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror as well and be, you know, you can be ruthless by making decisions that, like I said before, people don't see, or they're important decisions which you have to deal with and other people don't. Whether they don't see that, that's you know, that's my problem or John's problem or whoever, in that aspect. But I I've lost my train of thought. Sorry.
You were talking about this importance of not dividing what you are as a person, in terms of what you are as a business leader.
So, okay. So I mean, the ruthlessness can come from that, and it doesn't need to be how you speak to people or how you speak. So, I don't know. I am who I am. I think people should look at that, and then you should take that into, or try and take that into the culture of what you're doing, or otherwise, then, what are we doing? Like, do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Or why are we speaking to people in a certain way? And then, and
you can't.
Me personally, I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I think you should carry yourself and treat people how they want to be treated, whether it's in business or whether when you're walking down the street or whoever. You know what I mean? Because that's the most important thing. Because I'd rather be judged on that when I'm all done and dusted. That I was ultimately respectful.
Yeah, and I mean,
is that not more important than what's in your wallet? Because you don't take your wallet to the grave either.
Well, that's right. And also, where you'll ultimately succeed is on the basis of your purpose, not on the basis of purely chasing profit.
Yeah.
And the other point I think is that the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can be a fair, clear, respectful leader who also delivers great financial results. I think it can go the other way, that people who ultimately don't approach their businesses in an ethical or a moral or a respectful way. I'm not saying that there aren't nasty rich people. There are, but I agree with you. At the end of the day, when you exit your business, what are you left with then in terms of what you reflect upon and in terms of the personal credibility and the personal fulfillment you've built up? So the idea, I think, that to succeed in business, you have to be immoral, you have to be ruthless, you have to be prepared to gain a competitive advantage by any means. It just doesn't. I just can't buy into it.
What is success, and you know what I mean, and how does that, how do you want to be viewed as successful and stuff like that? Look, as long as I can go home at night and the people in the four walls are the most important, look at me with respect and that I've done the most for them, then that's fine for me. You know what I mean? Rather than, you don't have to be ruthless and stuff like that. That's just not how I live my life anyway. Someone might be looking and go, well, that's too soft. So I'm not soft, but I think just there's a bigger picture at play, you know what I mean? And I think I'd like to just, be able to live my life with a culture that in business and things like that. And things, I don't know, like Orange, it should be fun, do you know what I mean? And you're going out your way and you actually create an experience for people that, they want to enjoy and remember and make memories. So you've got to have that behind the scenes as well, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. One of the things I've sort of, when I've eaten and drank in a number of your places, there seems to be a theme of travel around them. Is that something I've rightly sort of picked up on? Because you've got a deli which felt that is that Slim's the deli, the sort of New York style deli.
A diner. It's like a deli. Yeah. Sorry,
a diner.
Well, I mean, I think, again, it goes back to the same before about not being so insular, and I think you get a lot from traveling around, and a lot of, especially for food and drink wise. Like at the start, we did a lot of stuff to like Berlin or Barcelona. That was originally your kind of dive bar kind of mentality, and obviously a lot of trips to New York. And the guys have done plenty of trips to Mexico regarding the tequila things. I think you have to see all these things to create a genuine environment that is, you probably, you pick up on things, or could be a life fitting or something that is, in like the industrial look or whatever, and from different certain places. So you have to, I think it's essential, really.
Is because you mentioned Barcelona there, and that definitely is something which sprung to my mind with particularly some of your bars.
Yeah,
is the Gothic Quarter there in Barcelona is fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Barcelona is a great city, isn't it? But we originally there's times where we talked about opening a place over there. That was a few years ago, but obviously I think we probably both still like somewhere out there. But it's got there was a lot of elements we took from that originally in the first one, because if you go in like sort of Raval now, which is around there, and sort of anywhere off La Rambla, there's loads of little bars like that, which we kind of tended to take. And you take a lot of more so much. I mean, it depends what you're going for, but a lot can be for decor and experience and kind of like the feel rather than product. But you definitely get that from traveling. The more you can travel, just in a scale for anything, I think opens your perspective, and like we said before, you know, even on a humanistic approach.
In terms of the UK, do you think that there's an appetite amongst either the hospitality industry or the consumers, the market, to have more of a Barcelona type feel to it? Or is it, there seems to be a lot more kind of the chain retail style coffee shops and bars and restaurants in the UK rather than independent groups such as yourselves. Is that right?
To an extent, I think there's a lot of, you know, let me think. No, there's a lot of scope. There's a lot of scope for it. I think that it is there. I mean, you'll see, if you talk about coffee, for instance, you could have gone you go back like 5 years, with all due respect to any other places, but if you go like the Lake District, or let's say any even city, let's say Chester, you know, things like any of these cities, you'd struggle to get a really good cup of coffee at a speciality level. Whereas now, if you take Chester, for example, Chester's coffee scene is second to none. It's got some great places, about 4 or 5. The Lakes has changed a lot. So that you're seeing people look at Manchester, even Manchester's sort of like the Ancoats area, which was completely derelict. Liverpool to an extent around Bowl Street, etc. There is an appetite for it. I think, you tell me, I think there's people want that. They want to be able to go into independent businesses and see people running them and that, you know, being part of the culture of each place. Whereas, you know, soulless shopping precincts, should we say? Not precincts, what's the word? Ones on the edge of the... What are they called? Retail parks.
Retail parks, yeah. Yeah, that's my idea of hell, going to those places.
Yeah, but they're all the same, aren't they? And that comes back from again, what we were talking, it links it back, doesn't it? Because they're there because people have the monopoly on things, and big corporates that they, you know, they can put them in certain places, and, you know, people think that's unfortunately the options they have, and it's quite sad really, because there should be, it affects quite a lot of smaller towns where they put these on the outside and kind of catastrophically finishes off the high street, where there should be some sort of investment or plan, even at a national level. Look, this is the way of getting your high streets back, because I think there is, people want to shop, they want to see local butchers again. It's like coming back full circle. You want to be able to walk past and go to an independent coffee shop or something of that ilk. So just making that, how that comes back into culture. I mean, if you see it, you go across to Copenhagen, things like that, they're all leading the way for that, and how things come back using growing locally and things like that. I think on that perspective, we're slightly behind, but I do think people want that.
And I mean, one of your businesses is Duke Street Food and Drink Market, and that, what you've just said, really resonates with me in terms of how that is sort of set up. So, and I know you feel quite strongly about this, about the sort of the way city centres can be sort of redeveloped and redefined. So, just tell us a bit about what is Duke Street Market, and what was the inspiration behind the concept that you've built there?
Well, I think, you know, we got approached by that with our business partners, and you know, we were, we just couldn't pass up the opportunity. We actually at the time were like, we'll probably, you know, move out and look at elsewhere at Liverpool. But then I think having that, there was a gap where a culinary hub would have, you know, was needed, and also, you know, for it to be kind of one of the sort of number one tourist attractions on a culinary aspect, and have that quality, was just too good opportunity not to be part of. And I think like goes on from what I was just saying, that, you know, these types of people, there's definitely a market for it. So that, you know, people want these things because, you know, obviously, you know, touch wood, it's very busy, and people like the aspect of being social in there. Again, I think what it also does is everyone has very diverse needs, whether it be, you know, economical, diet-based, or whatever. Family, family, lads, girls, and night out, doesn't matter. It ticks all the boxes, and these people can sit side by side, and there's no prejudice about where they're being. And I think people like that, and being in a busy social environment and around people. And you're seeing that then in most city centre planning and town planning are all looking at developing those kind of concepts and bringing life back in that way, because obviously something's got to change, because the retail and it needs a reform. But I think people want these type of things in there, and as you see, every single one that's opened, I mean, it seems to be wanted. Some have got 2 or 3 in the cities now.
Because, I mean, you've made a particular success of it because I know you got some TV exposure. That was, what was it called? The £1 Million Menu. It was the Kitchen Pilgrim, which is in the...
It was, yeah.
And I mean, how did that all come about then? Because it must have been fantastic promotion for the business.
We got approached, and then we actually were sort of like, we were involved in kind of like the casting sort of behind, because you kind of like, so who will go on the show and who won't. And then they just asked if you want to go on, be on the panel. And then the story from that just came organically then, that Pilgrim, who it was at the time, they obviously wanted like an East London restaurant and stuff like that, and the narrative of the show was like, well, you know, can we pull these up to Liverpool, which did happen. It was all legit, and then obviously they opened in Duke Street Market, and that was they've left now, but they are looking at a site up the road, and I think it was really beneficial to it. Obviously, it was like a flagship part of the concept. Having a restaurant of that ilk up there, they got a Bib Gourmand, which is like a Michelin award as well. And yeah, they've moved on, and then now Paul Askew is probably, you know, the most famous Liverpool chef. Probably kill me if I didn't say that. You know, he's gone in there with Barnacle, which has just added to the market, having that the story of kind of like, you know, Liverpool, what's in the Liverpool culinary area. So yeah, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I do quite enjoy the media side of things like that. It was, you know, got to meet some really good people from it. And yeah, I'd do it again if they asked.
It's those types of promotional opportunities which allow you to showcase your own personality and those of your people as well. And you can't really buy that, can you?
No, not at all. And I think from that, we've kind of, like I say, I do like that. So I've got my own podcast, and I kind of, we've actually been doing a bit of filming alongside. I've always wanted to, and from what we've been talking about as well, is kind of promote what's on your doorstep. So like what, you know, the independent businesses, whether it be culture, you know, people growing their own produce and seeing things that you don't usually see. So we're actually working on a show at the moment, and we just finished the pilot about that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's something I really feel passionately about, and telling these people stories that we don't see, because a lot of negativity, isn't there? About, I think it needs to be, you know, stories of positivity showing. So that's something that I've been working on, yeah.
I'm really interested in what you just said there about those stories of positivity, because I completely agree with you. There's my concern is that the way the media is developed in terms of its business model, which it's more, seems to, the view's been formed that it's more engaging to highlight negativity.
Oh, yeah.
That unless we keep those positive stories front and center that we're inadvertently nurturing a generation of risk-averse, negative people and businesses. So that really resonated with me, what you just said, Matty, in terms of keeping that positive messaging, that there are opportunities, that for sure there are risks as well, but that there's good news out there. And let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, the media out of this, about what's been going on, I think a lot of people have seen how manipulative it is. I mean, I just switched news off now, don't even look at it. And I think everyone went through a stage, didn't they, where they were tuning into the 10 o'clock news just to see all the pandemic news. And then it's like, the more it carried on, it's like, this is just fucking like scaremongering tactics for anything. I think the best thing that came out of that was the people doing the DJ and things, to the 10 o'clock news sound check. Have you seen that? Yeah. I love that. That was great. But
isn't the mainstream media a little bit bankrupt in terms of its business model? The reason I say that is, and this is why I love podcasts so much, because podcasts are the opportunity for people who are truly independent and don't have any dogs in fights just to talk objectively about the issues that face us. Whereas if you look at something like the mainstream news, well, there's two things. Number one is that their whole structure is about doing so many different stories in such a short time frame that how can you get insightful content and information in like a 2-minute clip? It's just not possible. And that's even if you're approaching it in a completely non-partisan way.
Yeah.
Whereas with podcasts, look at us today, we're talking about Brexit, we're talking about business, we're talking about the media, but in a way where you and me are not under any pressure from anyone in terms of what we're going to say. We just say what we think.
Yeah.
And then it's for the audience to judge whether they agree with us or not.
And that's the thing. And the problem is as well, now it's not just TV viewers, is it? It's about how many clicks you get. And what people, the problem is as well, is like, the more you click on a certain thing online, the more you're going to get that push through an algorithm to your phone.
Correct.
So the more, and I think this is an issue, isn't it? In the sense that people are seeing things, I'm going to use like, let's say a teenage girl, for example, and all they see is pictures of a girl looking like a certain way. Then they click on that, then they see another one, thinking that's normal, but it's not, because it's getting pushed to your phone. And all this stuff should be banned. Do you know what I mean? And then this is causing anxiety, negativity, problems. And it'll be the same with the media. You click on a certain type of media or news, and then it's going to push you more bad news. You know what I mean? So it's like you're in this thing, and I'm not gonna, the less I look at that, the better I feel. Do you know what I mean? And that's.
Have you seen the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma? Yeah.
Well, the endless scroll.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be banned. Using red for danger, and I don't know. It's like anything, in it, gambling, drinking. They've all have legislation and restrictions where at some point it is going to be, because it is pretty toxic. Look, at the other side of the coin, it has its benefits because people can stay in contact with each other, and you see that the technology can help.
And business promotion, it's got its part to play.
But it all needs regulating. But then, this is the thing, and where the media comes on top of that, then you think, well, what can they push? They can just push something, their agenda on you, whenever they want.
Yeah, I had Angela Eagle on the podcast, MP. She'd been in Parliament for 30 years, a couple of months back, and we were talking about this issue of online safety.
Yeah.
And Angela was offering the view that the fundamental issue here is the business model of the social media companies, which is all about retaining your attention. That's the commodity that they're trying to source. So it makes they're not bothered if what is appearing on your newsfeed is good for you. They're all about retaining attention, and it seems to me that that's quite dangerous, because what retains our attention doesn't necessarily have any sort of positive impact upon ourselves in terms of our well-being or upon our behaviours in society.
Yeah. And you know what? It's strange as well, because on the other perspective, as a business, it's like you can't ignore it either. So you have to use this tool where you're trying to push things on people. It has to obviously be ethical. But obviously, like, I don't know, it could be something like he's promoting a certain day of trade or whatever, or special, or, you know, if you don't use these tools as well, you're fucked.
Yeah,
so
correct.
But then it's like, you know, then it's about how you get that. And so again, it's about, I suppose it's about regulating things really, but without social media, you know, you've got to use it on a business level, especially in our game. And we know that firsthand. But then it's like, it's how you use it and how you want to push things. But like, you know, it's like, not like you said before, like moving with the times, where you go to a restaurant, is the thing, let's say 5-10 years ago. Well, okay, you read a review, you go to the restaurant, your journey starts at the door, right? When you get your plate of food, you then critique the food. That's done now before you've within 10 miles of it. So you might say, let's go here. You'll check it. Not sure those pictures are quite right. I'm gonna go. So you've got to make sure this is legit to get them through the door. So your journey of a guest going to a restaurant starts days before they've even turned up.
That's fascinating.
It's hard.
It is.
It's
I bet
hard,
it is.
yeah.
And I bet it can be. Is that must be incredibly frustrating in your industry when you do a great job, when you deliver great products and service. Well, you can't control what someone says about you on Tripadvisor, can you?
Oh no, don't. I mean, fuck, Tripad, don't get me started on that.
Really?
Word. Yeah, you shouldn't have said that.
It's the Wild West, man, isn't it? It really is.
Oh, Tripadvisor's horrendous. I mean, some of the stuff you see on there that, like, again, it should just be, you know, I don't know why people go out, you know, sometimes they review things and you think, why are you just going out to review something so negatively? You shouldn't be allowed out the house. They should be locked down permanently.
Yeah.
But, you know, but then it's like, you know, stop going out ruining your own night. You know what I mean? Just if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. But I've seen like people like personal slating people about how they look, stuff like that. Yeah, and people have seen them, and then you're like, oh, and they don't take them down, and you think, what the fuck's the point of that? Where okay, I get online reviews are important, yeah, but that Tripadvisor is a bad one. Tripadvisor needs. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It needs nuking.
Well, you think to yourself, what benefit is it giving anyone? And inevitably, again, people are drawn to negativity.
Exactly, yeah, exactly, and that's the problem, isn't it? So, you know, and it's all a big game. You know, you see people open a place and then they've got 1,000 5-star reviews the next week, and then they're number one on TripAdvisor, and then that doesn't give a proper review of the city or whatever and things like that. So it's a load of bollocks, that it really is. And you know, you see people now just trolling the people who've done it back, because it's like, but because in the past I think it was very, oh, the guest is right and you can't say anything back. Where sometimes it's like, no, hang on. That's not right.
You've
what
got
are you saying that for?
That's fundamentally unfair, isn't it? Yeah. Not having the right to reply, and also any reply being judged as being sort of political, and it's not right, is it?
No, and people could think, like, I don't know if it's changing, but people think they can speak to staff in hospitality into how they want, and as far as I'm concerned, you can't. So if you're going to speak to someone like that, be prepared to be ejected, because you can't do that. And I think. I don't know if it's a generation thing. Definitely more older people. That was in a certain. Well, I don't know. That's generalising. I don't know, but I think there's people who go out there just specifically to do that. Probably just to satisfy their own egos.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also certain people seem to be empowered by their ability to communicate toxicity at scale.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, and I think it's an unintended consequence of social media, but it's provided them with a vehicle to do that in a way that is seen by some as credible. And I just think, is that really what we want?
Well, maybe it goes back to what you're saying, doesn't it? Because the people at the top, people like Mark Zuckerberg and people like that, seem to be out away with the fairies now. And it's like they should be the ones accountable, whereas, you know, how can you not make changes or do these things and put these things in place now? Because otherwise you are going to have we already have a big problem.
Yeah.
Where he's more interested in changing his name, putting people into a virtual metaverse or whatever. Scary, like.
That's next, isn't it? We're all going to be living online, and
you'd be doing this podcast like virtual reality.
Yes, that will always be the dream.
Hey, look, do you know what? If it's used right, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Like you haven't seen a relative who lives in Australia, for example. You look like you're sitting in the same room, but it's just, how is that going to then, mental health, for example, you're going to stop people wanting to engage with the real world completely?
Well, that's the risk, isn't it? The risk is, I mean, how far are we from that now? Because my 10 and 8-year-old, it's difficult to get them off the digital world. That's what they're pulled towards.
Yeah, well, if you, like my nephew's 19, for example, he can not leave his room, play FIFA, speak to all his mates. So they've socialised, but they haven't gone out.
Yes.
Which is fine in a sense, but then it's like, well, you've got to get outside. You know what I mean? When I was younger, you know what I mean? But when I was like, there was no phones when I was younger, and then, you met your mate in the park, you play footy for hours, like, and then, you're in the park, you're in nature. Surely got to be more beneficial.
Well, it has beneficial to your physical and mental well-being, surely, and to your ability to socialise.
But I think you're seeing that, though. People are understanding that from the pandemic, aren't they? Where they're like, right, I'm going out for walks and I'm getting back out there. So I definitely think people are getting more. That's probably maybe a positive thing that's going to come out of that.
I think so.
But I think, getting people out the house in general, in the hospitality, again, it's difficult. How do you get someone who can order Deliveroo for cheaper, and then order watch Netflix without going to cinema? It's cold outside. You've got an uphill battle. You've got to really have. And Deliveroo, that's a problem in itself. They're monopolising anything, and that's just.
Well, I wanted because I know I've got to let you go soon, but I want to just talk about this Deliveroo issue and this change just for a couple of minutes, because I want to ask you about your future plans then, maybe just for the last couple of minutes.
Go on.
So Deliveroo, is that mentality that you just described, sort of the desire to have a restaurant quality meal dropped off at home, is that something that's here to stay? Is that a long-term consequence of COVID, or do you think people will migrate back to the city centres and the town centres, to the restaurants and bars?
I think it was already there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
I think it was already there. It's massive. Obviously, you go to London, you're seeing Just Eat, Uber Eats, Deliveroo. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I can't stand it. Like, I cannot stand it. One, they're taking majority of profit out of anything. So you're just doing it for exposure a lot of the time. Unless your business is that. So you have these things called dark kitchens. Have you heard of them?
No,
So basically, you say you have a unit, there'll be 20 kitchens in there. They'll be owned by Deliveroo. So you've got your street food concept or whatever. They'd rent you that kitchen, and that's all you'd do. So that's kind of they're trying to monopolise it that way. So I think there's a big one in Salford actually, where it's got 20, 30 kitchens in. So they've got 20, 30 businesses in there, but the Deliveroo only. It's all very strange to me. But then they monopolising the whole thing, and then they can take up to 35% of every delivery.
That must be your margin gone, is it?
It's gone, yeah.
I like going out to eat. I know many people I do won't view that as a replacement. But I mean, it must be one of the things you factor into your future plans. And let's just wrap up by talking about those. So it's early 2022. You're one of the leaders of Graffiti Spirits Group. I know we've not had time to talk about your work as a writer in the hospitality industry, but that's something you're very well respected and acknowledged for as well. If we were to meet back again in 5 years, what's your plans and what do you think you'd be telling us then?
I don't know. I've lost the sense of time at the moment as well. 5 years' time, that's very difficult. I'd hope that we'd developed quite a few of the brands and kind of more staple in sort of the UK market. And then I would hope that by that point our lab things, so we make a lot of products, our retail side of things, maybe you've seen them in some shops or whatever. and we'd like to be able to do that. That's probably the next stage of making our own products and getting into retail. So
you've got that nice diversity, haven't you? That you've got both the retail opportunities and then the sort of in-shop, in-bar opportunities, and that's you're looking to grow them. UK, any international aspirations?
I'd hope so. I mean, I think 5 years, difficult one. That I think things change week by week at the moment. So I would hope that, yeah. And you know, it's hopefully we can see. Yeah, no, I hope that. I do hope that, but I want to see a change. But it'd be nice to have seen the UK move forward in that way as well, and especially Liverpool. So we always have a base here. But yeah, I advocate people shopping independently and using these businesses. That's a big thing I'd like to promote. And if I can promote that on a media level as well, then great, because I think you buying a coffee like you did before is so much more appreciated than on a big corporate perspective. And it goes back to what we were saying about how people want to be treated, I think. So I just would like to spread that message. But and if we're still doing that in 5 years in a very volatile industry, then touch wood, we've done all right.
Well, I think you will be, because certainly I just want to wrap up by congratulating you, Matty, on the success you've achieved to date and staying true to your principles, and also in terms of being ambitious and positive at a time when it's sometimes, like I said earlier, it's rough, it's tough in business, and we all go through that. And it's always just such an inspiration to me to meet with other business leaders who've followed the same path as me and who are still there fighting and still there succeeding. So it's been lovely to meet you, Matty. It's flew over. There's loads more we could have gone into, but I found your company great, both in terms of you, but also in terms of what Graffiti Spirits Group do. So I wish you all the very best, my friend. And in the meantime, let's say thanks to Matty Farrell.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good man. Well done.